The divorce papers were flimsy shields against the relentless Portland drizzle that wept down the windshield of my Honda. They felt impossibly heavy in my hands, a sheath of sterile documents summarizing the death of a decade. The ink on Marcus's signature was a bold, decisive slash of black, a stark contrast to the watery gray of the world outside. He had signed his name and walked away. How did it come to this? How did the man who once whispered menu ideas into the curve of my neck as we lay in bed become a stranger across a mahogany table, his lawyer a silent sentry beside him? My name is Clara. I am 34 years old, and this is the story of how a single careless joke, a tiny fissure in the bedrock of my marriage, split my world in two. It began, as so many implosions do, not with a bang, but with the slow, corrosive drip of routine. Our life was a carefully constructed diorama built for our two children, Ava, our thoughtful 7-year-old with her father's serious eyes and a sketchbook permanently attached to her hip, and Noah, a 4-year-old whirlwind of boundless energy. My world revolved around them. School runs in the pouring rain, playdates that left glitter in every crevice of our craftsman house, the endless cycle of laundry, the Sisyphean task of keeping the pantry stocked with organic snacks. I had chosen this, to be a stay-at-home mom. In the early days, it felt like a gift, a privilege to witness every first step, every new word. But as the years passed, the gift began to feel like a cage. I didn't realize it then, but I was starting to take the foundation of our life for granted. I was taking him for granted. Marcus. Marcus was a chef, a creator, a man who built things you could taste and feel. His restaurant, Hearth, was his soul poured onto a plate. He worked long, grueling hours, pouring himself into seasonal menus and temperamental sous chefs, coming home smelling of wood smoke and rosemary, with the weight of 100 hungry patrons on his shoulders. He was the provider, the steady hand, the quiet anchor. He was always there, always doing what he was supposed to do, and I began to resent him for it. He would come home, his face etched with fatigue, and I would unload my day upon him like a dump truck reversing. I'd talk about Ava's struggles with reading or Noah's latest tantrum over the wrong color cup. I'd complain about the leaking dishwasher or the car making a funny noise. I saw his weariness not as a sacrifice for us, but as a barrier to me. What about my needs? I was the one submerged in the beautiful, chaotic, and often mind-numbing world of small children all day. I was the one who soothed nightmares and mediated disputes over a single red crayon. I was starved for adult conversation, for a flicker of the passion we once had, for a single moment where I wasn't just Mom. The frustration festered inside me, an ugly, bitter weed. It coiled around my heart until I could no longer see the man I had married. I only saw the man who wasn't meeting my unspoken needs. The moment it all cracked was a Friday night, a rare evening without the kids, who were having their first sleepover at their grandparents' house. The silence in the house was a deafening roar. Marcus, bless his heart, was trying. He was making a nice dinner for us, a real one, not leftovers from the restaurant, but something he was creating just for me. Pan-seared scallops, a saffron risotto. He'd even opened a bottle of the crisp Sauvignon Blanc I loved. We were sitting at the dining table. I was on my second glass of wine, the warmth spreading through my limbs, loosening my tongue. I don't even remember what led up to it. Maybe we were talking about a glowing review his restaurant had just received, and I felt a pang of jealousy for his tangible accomplishments. His name in print, the applause. Maybe I was just exhausted from the week. The conversation turned to our pasts, to the people we were before we became us. I brought up Leo, a painter I had dated in college. Leo was the romantic cliché, spontaneous, passionate, perpetually broke, and utterly unpredictable. Our relationship had been a whirlwind of late-night gallery openings and impulsive road trips to the coast. It had burned out as quickly as it ignited. Marcus was the opposite. He was stability, kindness, a future I could count on. Laughing, I swirled the wine in my glass. God, Leo was a beautiful disaster. It's a miracle I survived him. Marcus smiled, a tired but genuine smile. Well, I'm glad you did. I wouldn't be here otherwise. And then the words slipped out. Slick with wine, coated in what I thought was humor. "Oh, I don't know," I said, looking at him over the rim of my glass. "You know you were my second choice, right? My safe bet." I laughed. A sharp, bright sound in the quiet room. He didn't. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, quieter, a shutter falling. I saw the hurt flicker in his eyes, a brief, unguarded flash of pain before he masked it. "That's not a very funny joke, Clara," he said, his voice flat. I felt a prickle of defensive anger. "Oh, come on, Marcus. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a stupid thing to say. You know I don't mean it." But it wasn't stupid. It was cutting. And deep down, I think I knew it. It was a verbal shard of glass, born of my own resentment, designed to make him feel a fraction of the insecurity I was feeling. In that moment, I chose to wound him rather than be vulnerable. Looking back, I see that night with blinding clarity. It was the moment I stopped seeing him as my partner and started seeing him as a target for my unhappiness. He pushed his chair back, his appetite gone. "I think I'm going to turn in early," he murmured, not meeting my eyes. I sat alone at the table, the expensive scallops growing cold on my plate, telling myself he was overreacting. But the first crack had appeared in the foundation, and the rain was just beginning to fall. In the weeks that followed, the crack widened into a chasm. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic split. It was a slow, silent drifting apart. The air in our house grew thick with unspoken words. Breakfasts were punctuated by the clinking of spoons against ceramic and the rustle of Marcus turning the pages of the newspaper. A paper wall between us. He began to retreat into himself, becoming a quieter, more distant version of the man I knew. He started staying late at the restaurant more frequently. "A new menu tasting," he'd say, his voice weary over the phone. Other nights, it was drinks with the sommelier to go over the new wine list. I didn't question it. Not really. Part of me didn't want to know. I didn't want to be the controlling, nagging wife. I had my own world, I told myself. A world filled with the endless demands of the kids and the house. A world where I was in charge. But I felt it. The distance was a physical presence, a cold spot in our bed at night. And as he pulled away, my bitterness grew. I felt profoundly, achingly alone. Here I was, running the entire domestic operation, and he was out there, working, socializing, living a life that seemed separate from ours. The resentment ate at me, souring my thoughts. My coping mechanism, my terrible self-destructive shield, was to sharpen my jokes. They became my weapons. One evening, he came home well past the kids' bedtime, looking exhausted. I was in the kitchen, wiping down counters with a vengeance. "Tough day?" I asked, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "You have no idea," he sighed, loosening his tie. "Oh, I think I do," I retorted, not looking at him. It must be so hard creating beautiful food all day while someone else handles the screaming, the diapers, and the existential dread of it all. "But hey," I added, my voice hardening, "at least you get to talk to adults." He flinched. "Clara, don't." "And don't what, Marcus?" "Don't state the obvious." That's how our fight started, not with shouts, but with my passive-aggressive jabs and his weary retreats. We had never really fought like that before, but now it seemed to be our primary mode of communication. Then came the phone. It was always with him, an extension of his hand. He'd sit on the couch in the evening, scrolling, a faint, almost imperceptible smile sometimes playing on his lips. He started angling the screen away from me, instinctively. A new password appeared on it overnight. A cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. I would lie in bed at night, listening to the sound of his thumb tapping on the glass screen in the living room, and a dark, ugly suspicion started to bloom in the back of my mind. Who was he talking to? Who could make him smile like that when he barely looked at me anymore? I remember one Saturday afternoon vividly. I was trying to get the kids ready to go to a birthday party. Noah was refusing to wear any shoes, and Ava had spilled orange juice all over her party dress. I was on the verge of tears, overwhelmed and frayed at the edges. Marcus was on the patio, on his phone. "Can I get some help in here?" I called out, my voice shrill. He came in, holding up his phone. Just give me 1 second. I have to finish this text. It's always 1 second, Marcus. One more text, one more call. It's like we're a distraction from your real life. That's not fair, he said, his jaw tightening. Isn't it? I shot back, yanking a new dress over Ava's head. I seem to recall a time when your family was your real life. I was pushing him, prodding at his silence, trying to get some kind of reaction. Any reaction. I wanted him to fight back, to yell, to show me he still cared enough to be angry. But instead, he just looked through me, his eyes empty. I'll get Noah's shoes, he said quietly. And the subject was dropped. But I knew. The way a sailor knows the weather is about to turn. The barometer of our marriage was falling, and a storm was coming. I was so wrapped up in my own anger, my own narrative of being the wronged party, that I couldn't see I was the one steering us directly into the heart of it. Suspicion is a poison. It seeps into everything. My suspicion had a name, and I learned it on a Tuesday night that felt like any other. I had come home early from dropping Ava off at her art class. Marcus was in our bedroom, supposedly changing out of his work clothes. I walked in without knocking. It was my bedroom, after all. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to me, phone in hand. He was so absorbed, he didn't hear me enter. I saw the screen over his shoulder for a fleeting second before he noticed my reflection in the darkened window and snapped the phone shut, his movement furtive and guilty. But it was too late. I had seen it. A name at the top of the text chain, Isabel, and next to the name, a small wine glass emoji. The world tilted on its axis. The air rushed out of my lungs. Isabel. The name felt alien, sharp, an intrusion into the sacred space of our bedroom, our life. I stared at the back of his head, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. When he turned to face me, his expression was a mask of pale, panicked guilt. He knew I'd seen it. The silence stretched for an eternity. My mind was a maelstrom of rage and fear. Finally, I found my voice. It came out as a raw, shaky whisper. Who the hell is Isabel? He froze. His eyes darted around the room, looking everywhere but at me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I knew all too well. She's just the new sommelier, he said finally, the words fumbling out. From the restaurant. Something about the way he said it, the hesitation, the refusal to meet my gaze, felt like a lie woven from thin air. A sommelier? I repeated, my voice gaining strength, hardening with disbelief. You put wine glass emojis next to all your colleagues' names, Marcus. Clara, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I took a step forward. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're hiding something. It looks like you've been lying to me for weeks. All those late nights, the drinks with colleagues. Was that Isabel? Have you been seeing her? I could see the guilt etched on his face, a deep, miserable shame. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about his feelings. I was a raw nerve of betrayal. And I just wanted the truth, no matter how much it hurt. We argued for hours, a circular, ugly thing, fueled by my accusations and his weak denials. He stuck to his story. She was a colleague. They worked closely. The emoji was a running joke. It meant nothing. I knew he was lying. I could feel it in my bones. Every evasive answer was another shovel of dirt on the coffin of our marriage. The end came on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks later. I was supposed to meet a friend for coffee, but she cancelled at the last minute. I had just picked Ava up from school early. An impulse, dark and undeniable, seized me. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to catch him. I drove home, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw his car. He was home early, too early. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't the familiar scent of our home. It was perfume, a light, floral scent that didn't belong. I walked into the living room, and there they were, Marcus and Isabel. They were sitting on our sofa, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the coffee table between them. A stack of papers that looked like wine-tasting notes was spread out. They weren't in a passionate embrace. They weren't doing anything explicitly wrong. They were just talking, laughing, sharing a space that was supposed to be ours, a space where our children played, where I had cried and dreamed and loved. The casual intimacy of the scene was more devastating than anything I could have imagined. My heart didn't just drop, it plummeted. My blood ran cold, then boiled. I think I just froze in the doorway, staring at them. Marcus's eyes went wide when he saw me, his face draining of all color. Isabel stood up quickly, a panicked look on her face, like a startled deer. "Clara," Marcus started, his voice shaky. "This isn't what you think." A bitter, hysterical laugh escaped my lips. "Really?" I shot back, my voice sharp as a shard of glass. "What do you think I think this is, Marcus? A business meeting. In our living room, on a Thursday afternoon." Isabel looked deeply uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. She started mumbling something about needing to go, but I didn't care about her. My focus was entirely on him. "You've been sneaking around with her," I demanded, stepping into the room, my voice getting louder with every word. "Is this what your late nights are? Tasting wine with your sommelier?" "It's not like that," he said, standing up slowly, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "You're lying," I cut him off. "You are just like every other pathetic cliché. I gave you everything, Marcus. I built this family. I raised our children. I took care of this home. And you? You've been sneaking behind my back with this woman. And now you're trying to gaslight me into thinking it's nothing." I'd agree. I was pacing now, my gestures wild. He kept trying to speak, but every time he did, I just shouted over him. The more I talked, the angrier I got. He had hurt me, and I needed him to know exactly how much it stung. Isabel had slipped out of the house at some point during my tirade. I hadn't even noticed her go. It was just me and Marcus, standing in the ruins of our living room. I wanted him to beg for forgiveness. I wanted him to break down, to tell me it was a mistake, that she meant nothing. He didn't. He just stood there, his face a stony mask. The fear and guilt were gone, replaced by a cold, hard resignation. There was no remorse in his eyes, no regret. "I don't think this is working anymore, Clara," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Those words hit me like a slap in the face. "What? You don't think it's working? You're the one who's been screwing around behind my back, and now you want to throw away our entire family?" His face was set. "I don't know what you want from me, Clara," he said. "I can't fix this." He took a breath and delivered the final, fatal blow. "It's over." The words didn't sink in right away. Over. And then something inside me snapped. The grief I should have felt was consumed by a sudden, shocking wave of relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. But right behind the relief was a towering, furious rage. Even in my fury, a sliver of truth pierced through. I had made the jokes. I had pushed him away. And now, I was paying the price. The aftermath was a blur of cold, hard logistics. Marcus packed a bag that same evening. I could hear Ava crying softly in her room, asking why Daddy was putting his clothes in a suitcase. Noah was too young to understand, but he felt the tension, clinging to my leg with a confused, worried expression. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was watching my family fracture in real time. The next few months were a grim parade of court papers, tense talks with lawyers, and the soul-crushing task of figuring out how to tell our children that their dad wasn't coming home for good. It was messy, painful, and ugly. Throughout it all, I never stopped blaming Marcus. I wrapped myself in the cloak of the victim. It was a simple, clean narrative that protected me from the far more complicated truth. He was the one who had an affair. He was the one who walked out. He was the one who screwed it up. I told this story to my friends, to my mother, to myself. I repeated it until it felt like the whole truth. I was a good wife, I'd say over coffee with my sister, my voice trembling with practiced indignation. I supported his dream, I raised his children, and he threw it all away for some woman who could talk to him about tannins and terroir. My friends rallied around me. They brought casseroles and wine. They called him every name in the book. Their support felt like a warm blanket, validating my anger, reinforcing my narrative. I had done everything I could, and he had thrown it all away. I remember the final court hearing with chilling clarity. I sat across from Marcus at a long, polished table. His lawyer, a woman with a severe haircut and an expressionless face, sat beside him. My own lawyer, a kind but weary man, sat next to me. The kids weren't there. Thank God. They didn't need to see this. Their parents, two strangers, fighting over who got the house and how to divide the remnants of their life together. Marcus didn't look at me, not once. He was calm, collected, as if this were all just a business transaction. And maybe for him, it was. Maybe it was easier for him to move on because he had already checked out a long time ago. But for me, it was different. I wasn't ready to let go of the family we had built, even if I had contributed to its destruction. I had stayed in that marriage for the kids, for stability, for the image of what I thought a perfect life should be. Now it felt like all of that had been for nothing. In the early days after he left, I felt a strange sense of relief. The constant tension was gone. The pretending was over. But that relief soon curdled into a profound loneliness. The house was too quiet. The king-sized bed felt like a vast, empty tundra. I didn't realize how much I had taken for granted until I was left with nothing but the echoes of our life together. The sound of his keys in the door. The low murmur of the TV after the kids were in bed. Even the scent of wood smoke on his jacket. I clung to my anger because it was easier than feeling the crushing weight of my own role in the mess. Blaming him was my shield. It protected me from the devastating truth that I had pushed him away, that I had been so wrapped up in my own unhappiness that I failed to see his. The victim narrative was the only thing holding me together, the only story that allowed me to get out of bed in the morning and face the day. But it was a narrative built on a foundation of lies. And deep down, I knew it couldn't last. Marcus moved on quickly. Men often do. He and Isabel got an apartment together downtown. A sleek, modern place with views of the Willamette River. The kind of place he used to sketch on napkins when we were first dating. He was free. Unburdened by the baggage of our shared history. And me? I was left in our craftsman house. A house that was suddenly too big, too quiet, filled with the ghosts of laughter and arguments past. I was left trying to pick up the pieces. The anger that had sustained me for months began to fade, leaving a hollow, aching void in its place. In the deafening silence of the evenings after the kids were asleep, there was no one left to blame. There was only me. The reckoning didn't come in a single dramatic flash. It was a slow, painful dawning. It came in fragments. It came when I was cleaning out the garage and found a box of his old culinary school textbooks, the margins filled with his neat, decisive handwriting. It came when I saw an old photo of us on a trip to the coast. Both of us beaming, him with his arm wrapped protectively around me. We looked so happy, so in love. What happened to those people? I started replaying our history in my head. But this time, I forced myself to look at it from his perspective. I saw the night of the joke. But instead of my own drunken indignation, I saw the genuine hurt in his eyes. A wound I had inflicted and then ignored. I saw the countless times he came home exhausted and seeking comfort, only to be met with my barrage of complaints and sarcastic jabs. I saw how I had systematically dismantled his sense of being wanted, of being my first choice, my only choice. The affair wasn't the cause of our divorce. It was the symptom. The disease was the distance I had created, the resentment I had nurtured, the pride that had stopped me from ever saying, "I'm sorry, I'm lonely, I miss you." One rainy Saturday, sitting alone in the quiet house, the full weight of it finally crashed down on me. I had played a part in this, a huge part. I had been so focused on pointing my finger at him, on playing the victim, that I never stopped to look at my own role in the mess we were in. The bitterness I had clung to for so long finally gave way to a wave of profound, gut-wrenching regret. I put my head in my hands and wept, not for the loss of my marriage, but for my own blindness, for the chances I had missed, for the love I had carelessly destroyed. Life now is a process of navigating this new reality. I am a single mom, trying to be better, do better for my kids. It's hard. Some days, the loneliness is a physical ache in my chest. There are moments of weakness when I wonder if we could have fixed it, but deep down, I know we couldn't. The damage had been done. But maybe the mistakes are the only way I'll learn. I'm learning to listen more, especially to my children. I'm learning to find my own identity outside of being a wife or a mother. I enrolled in an online creative writing course, rediscovering a spark I thought had died long ago. I am learning to live with myself. The woman who made that joke, who pushed her husband away, is still part of me. But she is not all of me. This morning, as I was making breakfast for Ava and Noah, the sun finally broke through the Portland clouds, streaming through the kitchen window. Ava looked up from her drawing and said, "Look, Mommy, a rainbow." And for the first time in a very long time, I looked out at the world and felt a flicker of hope. I would never get back what I had lost. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never take my family, my choices, or a single moment of love for granted again. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time, I feel like I might just be strong enough to walk it.